The Formula E show is back, ladies and gentlemen, and today we'll be discussing Porsche entering the sport next season. Neel Jani has got a drive for Porsche. We'll be talking about the testing taking place in Adria after the E-Prix, and some more news in the world of Formula E. All this and more next. It's been quite some time, hasn't it, since we've done the Formula E show. The last ever Formula E show we did was at the end of last season. We discussed the final weekend of the season at New York. We obviously discussed the new champion at the time, Jean-Eric Vergne, our reigning world champion. But this season, as I've said many times, not only did I want to bring back the Formula E show, a show I love to do and I really enjoyed doing last season, but obviously I wanted to give it a little freshen up as well. So what I've done is, rather than do it more the podcasty style that we used to do, where we talk about a whole topic for the hour, I've sort of done it more like we do a Let's Talk F1 and do it in that sort of format. So that's the idea with the Formula E show. And then on a separate day, I haven't really decided too much, but probably at the weekend when there's not a Formula E race, I'll do more of a long form sort of video talking about maybe one specific topic. But it just so happens that the first story for this week is more of a long form topic, and that was the news that Neel Jani, now that's a name I really struggled to say because I always thought it was Yanni, but Jani or Jani, you'll hear me change it many a time like I do Esteban Ocon or Ocon. I just do it on the fly, really. But the news is that he will be driving for Porsche next season. Porsche, obviously, if you don't, well, everyone knows who Porsche is, I'm guessing. Huge global car manufacturer. Does a lot of work in the WEC, building hybrid cars all over the shop at the moment, and have the track record with Neel Jani at Spa-Francorchamps this season due to their new Hybro Evo crazy car that's supposed to be an LMP1 car, but it's not really. It's more of a sort of abstract car. It's a crazy machine. It really is. But we all know who Porsche are, and they will be entering Formula E next season. So we'll be seeing them with a Gen 2 car. You can see on screen now, and you'll see another one in a couple of seconds. They have a sort of concept livery, which is very bare bones. You can see it in the background, and there is Neel Jani, who is a Porsche driver at the moment. I'll talk about him in a minute and what I think about this sort of driver lineup that we've got so far. He's the only one that has been confirmed, so I'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about Porsche then. So obviously, we've only just started a new season. You know, we've only had one race with HWA, one race with BMW, fully into the sport, one race again with Nissan. So there's many new teams at the moment in Formula E, and next year, like I say, we'll have another one in the form of Porsche, and Mercedes will be fully coming on board with HWA, but that's gone all a little bit quiet at the moment, so watch that space is all I'll say, and we might keep HWA for a few more seasons, especially considering the difficult start they had last time out in Saudi Arabia. But Porsche, a huge racing history, like I said, a lot of it in endurance racing. That is their sort of meat and potatoes, if you will, although they've gone a bit quiet of late on the racing front. So the fact that they're going to be entering Formula E, as I always say, it's brilliant to see more teams go into Formula E. We'll now have 12 teams next year. As of right now, we might see more, we might see less, but currently as it stands, we'll have 12 teams next year in Formula E compared to Formula One's just 10. So I think we can all agree that a lot of manufacturers are seeing Formula E as the way forward, and Porsche, a name that for years people have wanted to see come to Formula One. Well, actually they were in Formula One, weren't they, for a brief period in the 80s, I believe it was, the mid-80s, so people have wanted them back for a very long time. The same as Jaguar. People really wanted Jaguar to make another big attempt in Formula One, but both of them have gone the way of Formula E, and of course, another major manufacturer. I mean, you look at Formula One these days, and although you've got the likes of McLaren in and around that mix, you've got the likes of Alfa Romeo, really, there is four constructors when you really break it down. You've obviously got Honda, Renault, Mercedes and Ferrari are the only teams that produce their own engines. And, you know, that's something that, again, you know, Formula E, a lot of it is regulated, a lot of it is spec parts, so they don't have the freedom for design. So in that sense of things, Formula One, obviously the teams like McLaren will use as an example, are more of a manufacturer in that sense that they have to make all the parts mostly for the team, minus the tyres and regulation things. But the real, again, I don't know, I'm going with meat and potatoes today, but the real meat and potatoes of the car, obviously, in Formula 1, is the engine. Could be argued. So it's great to see them coming over to Formula E and obviously being the Formula E show. And you guys know how much I love Formula E. That's a big thumbs up from me, but I'm sure on the same side of things, some people from the Formula 1 side would really be a bit gutted about this one. Obviously, we've had news before that maybe Audi are looking into way to Formula 1. Aston Martin for a few years have been trying to sneak a way in, but this is, again, we've known this news for a while. This isn't new news that Porsche is going to Formula E, but it's something that I haven't really spoken too much about, and I thought because there's so many of you guys that are new to Formula E, this might have been something that's gone under the radar and something for you to look forward to next season. Right, let's get on to the big announcement then that really has caused me to talk about Porsche, and that is Neel Jani, who will be driving for the team next season. If you don't know who Neel is, someone who hasn't really been in the single-seater sort of area of racing for a fair bit of time. Although in saying that, last season in Formula E in Hong Kong, he took part in both of those races. So the last season in Formula E, season 4, we saw a double header opening weekend. So we saw a full sort of race on the Saturday with qualifying, and then on Sunday as well we saw another one. So it counted as 2 rounds in the championship. He drove for Dragon, but had a pretty awful weekend. That being said, the car wasn't great. He was a rookie, but finished 18th in both races, and last season as well, it was out of 20 finishers. So it was a real difficult weekend for Neel Jani, and he didn't show up again to Formula E after that one. Jose Maria Lopez took his place for the rest of the season, and that was really it, really. And quite a few drivers in Formula E seem to do this, where they have maybe one race, 2 races, and then never show up again. And to be honest, that's what I thought with Neel Jani, to be totally honest with you. I thought he's one of these drivers that, he'll do this one-off race, give it a go, and if he likes it, he likes it, and if he doesn't, he doesn't. But Formula E already this season seems so much more serious, with so much more attention on the series. Things like this, I don't think are going to happen, well, as near as much as they used to. And at the same time, the standard of drivers on the grid has gone up that little bit more. And Neel Jani being on the grid, is he one of the best on the grid? I don't think he is. I'm just going through some of his previous, I suppose, achievements in his motor racing career. And he won Le Mans. He won Le Mans back in 2016 with Porsche, so big thumbs up for that one. And he won the WEC Championship again in 2016 with Porsche. But apart from that, his career hasn't really been incredible. And in single-seater terms of things, it has been pretty bare bones, to be totally honest with you. So Formula E is a real sort of left field push for this guy who, again, hasn't really done a lot of single-seater racing. So it's a questionable choice for me. It makes sense, the fact that he has this huge affiliation with Porsche, obviously doing a lot of work with them now. He's done a lot of work with them in the past. Again, winning Le Mans, winning the WEC with Porsche is a huge thing to have under his belt. So that makes sense. It's also, I say rumoured, but it's pretty common knowledge in the world of Formula E that Neel Jani dropped his Dragon seat to become a development driver for Porsche to help them with this new car. So obviously, again, that makes sense that he's aligned himself with a manufacturer. But, again, I really have to question his speed. And I question whether there's better choices out there. Because, obviously, the Formula E grid next year, I imagine, will look nothing like this season. But at the same time, I look at drivers coming out of Formula 2. You've got the likes of Artem Markelov, who won't be taking part in there next season. You've got Sergio Sette Camara, which I doubt will make that jump to Formula 1. Nick De Vries. You've even got guys like Brendan Hartley, who are falling out of Formula 1, when this could be a brilliant opportunity for them. And actually, that being said, Brendan Hartley would actually be a really good choice alongside Neel Jani. I actually quite like that idea, so I'll think about that, because I think he won Le Mans as well with Porsche, and I'm pretty sure The 2 WEC wins he got were also with Porsche, so that could be really interesting to see Brendan back in a single-seater, especially after his Formula 1 career, which was okay, but nothing too special. And then, as I've said before, you've got the likes of Esteban Ocon sitting in the sidelines. He could have a drive. Marcus Ericsson, another one that have proven themselves in Formula 1. Maybe Marcus Ericsson not so much, but it's another seat that could go to the likes of those guys. And of course, you know I'm going to say that Fernando Alonso, that would be brilliant to see him in Formula E. And if he could line himself up with Porsche, a team which, again, I really want to reiterate this, and I've done it over last weekend when we had the first race of the season. You can't expect teams like Nissan, who actually did really well for their first ever race, but HWA to really kick on. BMW, I definitely think it's a bit of a fluke. A fluke's the wrong term, because Andretti have been in the sport since day one, and at the same time BMW were sort of partnered with them last season, but have come on fully formed this season, so that's a little bit of a different sort of situation because the team wasn't from scratch. The only team on the grid that was completely from scratch was HWA, the Mercedes team, and so I think that's the team you've got to focus this on. I really do think that's the sort of evolution that Porsche are going to have to go through as well. And it's going to be tough for them. It is going to be tough for them. It really is, because you look at the guys at the front at the moment. BMW, like I said, are sort of a new team, but they've had so much money pumped into the team. They've got experienced guys in the team, experienced drivers. You've got Techeetah that really have gone on leaps and bounds from where they should have been, and now have this partnership with DS and look like they're going to be a top team. Audi, of course, they had a poor weekend, but they're going to be back up at the front. Mahindra, Nissan, all these teams that have experience in Formula E and will be fighting at the front. Nissan as well, if you're new to Formula E again, they were Renault last season, more of a rebranding than a brand new team. So if you ever hear me say that Nissan aren't a new team, that's why. It's more of a rebrand, a renaming of the team rather than a brand new team, if you sort of understand. It's a bit strange. It's a bit strange. I've spoken about it many times, but yeah, it's not one that I like to really look into deeply into. But we say they're a new team, but they're not really. But HWA, they are the ones that have gone in. They're going to have a learning year, and taking 2 rookies as well is an even bigger challenge. But again, I think if the drivers and the team can learn together, I think that's going to be a big benefit after all. I really do. Obviously, if they did have a driver with some experience, I know Mauro Engel drove for Venturi last season. I really expected him to be in HWA with his Mercedes ties. So when Van Dorn and Paffett were decided to drive for the team, I was surprised. I can't deny I was surprised. But at the same time, can you really blame them? You know, Engel wasn't the best driver on the grid. He was fine, but I think they really wanted to help boost publicity for Formula E, which I think the signing of Van Dorn definitely has done. And I think Porsche, in a similar sort of way, will try and go under the radar a little bit in their first season. And then I think second season, third season, we'll hope to build on that. But with these established giants in the sport, it's going to be difficult. You know, it is going to be difficult. But I really hope that Brendan Hartley can get that seat. I really would love that. Fernando Alonso again would be up there. And wouldn't it be great to see Mark Webber back in a car? Obviously, he did a stint with Porsche as well in the WEC. That would be something pretty cool to see old Marky Mark back in a car. But I'd love to know who you think should be alongside Neel Jani. And do you think Neel Jani is the right appointment? Obviously, again, that first ever and only weekend he did in Formula E wasn't very good. Wasn't very good at all. Again, in a pretty dodgy car. But at the same time, he's got to step up his game if he wants to do anything next season, or just keep his drive for a couple of seasons' time. Right, that is that out the way. I really love talking about Porsche in Formula E, and just new teams in general I love. But that's not always what the focus is on. And this weekend, after the race, we got a chance to see the Gen 2 cars once again in a more laid-back sort of situation. You know, put your feet up, have a rest, have a drink, but also jump in a car and razz it round at, I was going to say 200 miles an hour, but we're not there yet. We're 150 miles an hour, let's say. Right, so testing. We all know about testing. What does it do for us as viewers? Not a fat lot. It's not competitive. We'll go through the times. We'll talk about a few interesting things that happen during testing. But at the end of the day, it's more for the teams to gather data. And for these guys who had limited running during the weekend, a lot of them as well had limited running full stop due to no practice, which was due to the rain, which took place earlier on in the weekend, which did cause utter carnage at the circuit. So that was fun for us sort of older viewers of Formula E, which it was just so strange and random. But at the same time, it was worrying because so many new people were coming over to Formula E. And of course, they're thinking, oh my God, are they serious? Is this the broadcasting they do for Formula E? I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, that's what a lot of new fans were thinking. And I had a chance to speak to Sean about it, the F1 Word. He was definitely feeling that as well. Obviously, there were issues with the cameras not picking up the right things, the marshals having issues themselves, no team radio. It was all very strange. Not the cleanest weekend, but we've gone past that now. And, of course, the main focus of this, just reiterating once again, is more for the teams to gather data because they have had limited running so far. So then, let's go through the more interesting things of the day. And it was actually Sam Bird who was fastest of all. So Sam Bird driving for Virgin with the Audi powertrain. He was fastest of all, with John O'Byrne in second. So, again, you can't read too much into testing. You really can't. But, that being said, it's great to see that Virgin, I think, have a little bit more pace than a lot of us would have thought. And they did have a bad opening weekend, the same with Audi, but both teams did have penalties. Qualifying didn't help them either, and of course, they were able to work their way through the field, but not at a quick enough pace, really, when you think about it. So it was a difficult weekend, and of course, it is a street circuit, so overtaking is difficult. Fan boost and attack mode seemed a little bit too much for some drivers to comprehend, especially Felipe Massa, who got penalties for it. But Virgin and Audi, both of them, have time to improve. So great to see that Sam Bird was on top. Ollie Rowland was third, actually. He was obviously the fastest rookie. His first full season in Formula E, this will be. Stoffel Van Dorn was in P4, so that was great for HWA. They did cause a late red flag, though, so that will be warning signs for them. Now, it's still not going quite as smoothly as they would have liked. Mitch Evans was fifth fastest, ahead of the quickest sort of fresh face, the new guy on the block, Nico Muller for Audi, who did crash during the morning running, and again, he did cause a flag, but he put in a very quick time and actually looked very pacey. And I believe in the rookie test last year, he was actually the quickest of anyone. So he's someone that in Formula E, keep your eye on. I know Audi are really happy with their lineup, but he again could be someone that Porsche, with those German ties, could be looking at. So keep an eye out for Nico Muller. Eduardo Mortara was 7th for Venturi. Jose Maria Lopez was 8th, and he shared his car with Pippa Mann. And just to mention as well, Ollie Rowland shared his car with Carmen Jorda, ex-Lotus F1, just to let you know, everybody. Right, so obviously there was a lot of new faces, and I can't go through all of them, but something that I'm sure some of you will be happy about, some of you will feel a little bit funny about, but 9 female drivers were on the circuit throughout the day. The highest placed female was Simona Di Silvestro. I really struggle with that name, to be totally honest, and she finished in 10th place. She did drive for Andretti, actually, in the very first season of Formula E, but this is the first time that she's returned back to Formula E, and again with BMW Andretti, so that was quite nice in a way as well. But again, not too much major news to talk about. We had Jamie Chadwick, who ended up in P14. That was actually quite a solid drive for Neo. You also had Tatiana Calderon, who is this test reserve driver for Sauber Formula 1. She was driving for Techeetah. But apart from that, not too much to tell about in-season testing. Really, not too much. And I knew, obviously, there wouldn't be too much to talk about. But it's just, again, for the teams, gives them a chance to discuss their pace. Obviously, they don't do actual runs to show other teams. But internally, they know how much power they're using and all that nonsense. All that good stuff. So obviously that's their focus, but for us again, it just gives us another chance to get some stunning photos like this one and to see those Gen 2 cars back on circuit once again. But that's not all in the world of Formula E. Probably you can see already by the timing, the Formula E show is definitely nowhere near as long as the Formula 1 show. The biggest reason for that really, this is going to sound daft, but it's the length of the Formula E season. Means there's not as much drama, not as much talking points, and so because of the sort of massive gap between the races, unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, these are going to be a little shorter and more concise sort of news weekly videos. But we do have some smaller stories that I wanted to cover in this week's episode. So obviously a lot of the media attention has been on post-Saudi Arabia, Felix da Costa taking that immense win. But something that I wanted to just quickly talk about, that Formula E have put a lot on their social media platforms and plastered it all over their website, was Audi's pace. And Audi have come out and they've said that they're nowhere near the likes of BMW. But I just wanted to quickly say, don't believe these stories. Do not believe these stories whatsoever. Audi did this last year. They had a difficult start to the year, and this season, a few penalties in qualifying has really cost them. And I think they're really trying to overplay that like they did in the winter, saying that they've been nowhere near BMW. But I think Audi fans, you can calm down a little bit next time out. They'll be back up there. So I just wanted to mention that. But this man on your screen right now, Jean-Eric Vergne, it has been confirmed that this man has got a contract extension at Techeetah. Is anyone in the world surprised? If anyone follows Formula E slightly, they will know that this is probably the smallest bombshell that they've ever seen or ever heard of in their lives in Formula E. Obviously, he's just won the championship with Techeetah, a team that have never looked even likely to win the championship. He's got them this deal with Citroën. He's, like I say, Formula World champion. He's got multiple race wins, almost got the win this weekend. And of course, he's going to be in the fight this season. And he could very well be the first double Formula E World Champion. And then obviously, because of that, the most successful Formula E driver of all time. And as well, in the Autosport Awards, he was placed third in the best 50 drivers in the world. So this guy has got some talent. So it makes sense for Techeetah to keep him. The thing that I find a little bit odd is that they've come out and they've not specified the length of the contract, just that it's a new long-term contract. So to me that reads, we'll have him as long as he wants to be here, sort of thing, and if a better opportunity comes up for him, then we'll talk about it then. But I think obviously it makes sense for Jean-Eric to be at one of the best teams on the grid. You look at where else he could go. Yes, there could be a space at BMW next year. Yes, there may be a space in the future at Audi. But in the next couple of years, are we expecting any other teams to be really fighting at the front? I question that a little bit. I think when Mercedes come fully on board, when Nissan have another season under their belt, yeah, maybe talk about them. And Mahindra as well, they're always a team that's just about on the bubble. A little bit like a Force India from Formula 1. So, look, I think Techeetah's the right place for Jev. I do. A couple of seasons at least. I really do. This team, you've seen their trajectory. And if you haven't been there, you saw how quick they were this weekend. So this makes sense on all levels. I just wanted to quickly mention it. For any of you worried, he has got a seat for the next few years. And the final story of the day, something which I imagine a lot of you would have thought anyway, and that is founder of Formula E, Alejandro Agag, is being transitioned to chairman of Formula E. So it's all a bit messy, a bit like Formula 1. Who really owns Formula 1? We know Liberty Media do. Who's the boss of Formula 1? Is it Ross Brawn? Is it Chase Carey? It's all a little bit like that. Formula 1 Management, FOM, some people say that exists. Some people say no, that doesn't exist anymore. So that's all a little bit messy. Does the FIA count? So it's all a bit sort of strange. but Agag is now, who has been acting as chairman anyway, will now officially be the Formula E chairman, and obviously will focus on relationships with the commercial partners, host cities, and of course will be the bridge with the FIA. So that was the final bit of news for this week. Obviously, like I say, Formula E is a completely different playing ground to Formula 1, so this show is a little bit different to the Formula 1 variant, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Leave your comments in the comment section below. The next race is in about 3 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, in Marrakesh on the 12th of January. Hope you guys all have a very Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one.